Welcome to my cellar. We may have a long one here tonight. I've got quite a few comments, which delights me. I'm not complaining by any means. And also, you may go halfway and stop if you like, because there won't be one the following week. See, I normally tape these on Thursday night. I date myself. I normally record these on Thursdays. And next Thursday I'll be in Carrollton, Texas, having Thanksgiving daughter. Cheryl and I will be there having Thanksgiving daughter with our dinner with our 23-year-old granddaughter and her fiance, and meeting some of her fiance's family is what I understand. So I guess that's what's so I won't be making one next week. So enjoy this one. Got a lot to talk about tonight, so we'll just get started. Following up on something from the week before, the player versus player assassination would likely result in the family of the dead PC revenge hunting the assassin, putting a bounty out, or the town folk guards chasing down the assassin and killing him, then stealing all the equipment off the assassin, then dismembering the assassin and feeding the parts of the pigs in various locations. Yes, that's probably what had happened, and it's a good reason not to do it. Because if you're going to role play, you can justify being a vendetta pursuing individual, because vendettas have fueled a lot of killing over the centuries. So it would not end well. No, I'd metagame it to do something just like that. Okay, next one. Yes, love listening to your channel. Thank you again for sharing it with us all. Oh, sure. Hey, I love talking. Bet you never knew that. Speaking of which, today I spent about a little over an hour in a Zoom meeting with an author from England who has a signed book deal, writing about the psychology of tabletop role-playing. He's a psychologist himself, and this is my second interview with him, and I'm quite looking forward to the book when it's published next year. I hope we get a freebie. It's been an interesting talk with him both times about what it is we do and how we do it and why we do it, and I look forward to it. The irony of the title is not lost in that psychologists were the original progenitors of role-playing as a method of treatment and insights and whatever in group sessions. So it's not like TSR invented role-playing. No, it was one of those things that kind of sprung up in different places sort of around the same time. Because I know that Gary and Dave did not copy that model. I've disagreed with the person who said modern younger players are more likely to be PvPers, player versus players. I found that a lot more common in the 80s, with the destructive behavior almost always excuses, I'm just playing my alignment. One of the big reasons I banned the evil or chaotic neutral PCs in my game. Yeah, I've had interesting run-ins with people. I'm just playing my alignment. Well, I think that excuse that's just an excuse for bad behavior. If a group, I see an adventuring group similar to a pirate crew. They get together, they set down some guidelines, they figure out how they're going to, share out the loot, who's going to get what, etc. And then they go adventuring, knowing that they're not going to be stabbed in the back by some slimy bastard that's part of their group who's looking to get more. But hey, that's just the way I look at it. Your mileage may vary. Apparently it does with some people. And one of the reasons, back in the day when I I produced a set of NPCs that at one time we were thinking about making up a big book of them and marketing them as just a little fun with Eldritch. And I made the mistake of putting alignments, and it seemed as though that the thief characters or the characters with thieving powers took that as carte blanche to just be assholes. So I came to scrub all those off the sheets, and they have no alignments on them now. They have an empty box where it used to be, because the sheets are too pretty to scrap, and it's too much work to redo them. But that I'm just playing my alignment. Well, if that's the case, the DM should have been a little more careful in how he mixed his alignments, or a little more forceful in his expectations for players playing together as a group and not looking for turns to steal each other from each other. Someone needs to pull together a party bus for you and Jen to get up to GaryCon and pack. I feel you about getting older and long drives. I'll be blessed that I got to meet you a few times and got to play in your Wheel of Bloom game. Oh yeah, well thank you. I played the Wheel of game with a bunch of guys from a bunch of guys and one lady from Oregon last week. They were all first timers on the wheel. I think they had a pretty good time. I hope to see some of them again. I know the guy whose birthday it was that they planned the surprise for was tickled to death. So good, glad I could contribute. Yeah, wouldn't it be great if somebody got a nice van, and that had nice seats and a good sound system, and maybe a little cooler or fridge in the back, and yeah, that would be great. But until that happens, I'm really probably not going to be going to GaryCon again. And that really, I wish I could, because I feel a special association with GaryCon, having promised the family to do everything I could to get it off the ground right after Gary died. And I think I did a fairly good job. While listening to the When We Were Wizards podcast, I heard an interesting story that I wanted to ask you about. In it, Dave Wesley describes how Arneson was afraid of physical violence at the TSR shareholding meetings on November 1977. He said you were the principal heavy and you were fond of threatening people. Arneson told him you would sometimes sit behind him at meetings to intimidate him. Wesley recounts that he told Arneson to take a seat and that you immediately made a beeline for the seat behind him. Wesley said he then took the seat behind you and said, "Hey, Tim," as if to say, if you mess with him, I'll mess with you. Would love to hear your recollection of this, as well as if you thought Arneson was afraid of you or know why he was intimidated by you. Okay, and then the When We Were Wizards podcast society. That's complete and utter bullshit. I was the hippie in the company, remember? Not the hit man, the hippie. I didn't threaten anybody. Arneson was there for such a minimal amount of time during the whole time that I was there that I don't even know what meeting he might have referenced. I have no idea what meeting he might have referenced, and that I was the heavy, and what's he thought I was going to stick a needle in the back of his neck? That's bullshit. Dave was, I believe, one of those people that could be afraid of his shadow. David said several bullshit, libelous things about me and my behavior while I was there, and how I supposedly burned a hole in his armchair, and because I was stoned, and complete and utter bullshit. Besides which, his favorite armchair was a piece of shit that had holes worn in the arms, and bullshit. That's all. It didn't happen. I was never the heavy or the thug. I might have scared him a little bit because I didn't take any shit from him. I had really long hair. Okay, that might have scared Dave a little bit. He was kind of a rabbit anyway. But that I sat behind him as if to threaten him, crap. And I don't remember Dave Wesley running to sit behind me. I don't even remember Dave Wesley being in a TSR meeting. He may have been, but if he was, his presence was so nothing that I don't remember it. I don't know why Dave would say this shit. I don't know that I ever pissed in his Wheaties. He's hallucinating. It absolutely did not happen. I was never the heavy. I have no idea why he'd hallucinate. And if Dave told him that, well, then Dave was just conveying his paranoid feelings himself, that I was threatening. I was different. Had long hair and Fu Manchu. But threatening? Nah, I don't think so. It's just never been my bag. On dungeon ecology. Reminds me that most dungeons I've made with normal living monsters in it. I've had a few dungeons that were all undead or some other supernatural type of monster without normal metabolism. Have Otyas, rarely encountered, lurking in the cesspits, be it below garderobes or in some communal trash pit. I should probably mix it up a bit. Well, there's another question further on down the line here about dungeon ecology, and I'll address it more at that point. And in reply to this one, I believe that Otyugs, or whatever the hell they're called, Otyufs, are bloated in appearance with oval-shaped bodies around 8 feet, 2.4 meters wide, with 3 elephantine legs and a disquieting rock-like hide. I had to look up garderobe. Garderobe is a term for a storeroom for valuables or a private room in a medieval castle. It also means a toilet or a close stool, often with a hole discharging to the outside. Yep, by garderobe, I mean castle dungeon toilets. In my play group, there's a tradition of potentially friendly Otyugs living under toilets who just want to be fed by the people above. They're also mildly psychic. Helps explain why they can't be surprised. Okay, that's cool. And the reply to that was, wow, that's granular, well done. Yeah, cool. Just to clarify, I too don't care for player v player fighting, but my son and his friends seem to really enjoy it. They're 30-year-olds. It's not actual fighting between the players themselves, but only between the characters. In a recent one-shot, 2 of the characters actually killed the other 2 characters over a disagreement regarding killing a prisoner. The players were having a great time arguing and then coming to blows over a fairly understandable conflict in game-setting terms. Okay, it's a one-shot, so who cares long-term? But that sort of behavior seems to be more common among younger players, where they see in-party conflict as part of the role-playing experience. Have I noticed the same phenomenon? Well, I've heard about it. I can't say I've seen it, but I've heard more about it. There are a group of players, some still living, some dead, here in the greater Cincinnati area that used to play D&D with against each other. And they were very much PvP players and did heinous things to each other when they managed to catch the other guy alive. And their whole bag, the whole oeuvre or however you pronounce that, was based on this competition. And that's what they did. And in a purely, hey man, this is what we're going to do. We're going to kill each other and do heinous things to each other when we capture you. That's what, they enjoyed it. Okay, that's all they did. They go adventuring, and then as soon as they got a chance, because it seemed like there was a party, there was always a couple of parties wandering around in the dungeon, which is something I never do, but they did. And they did heinous things to each other, and enjoyed it. And, no hard feelings on Monday at work, because most of them worked together. All right, next. We ended our last OD&D session with a party lost in the underworld. Next session is next week. Well, I hope it was after this airs. What happens to a character if a player can't make it to the session? Does another player run that character? Does the DM run it as an NPC? Are there other ways to handle the potential problem? Well, according to the DM and what he or she will allow, another player could. All right. In the campaign that I'm running for the people in Okinawa, there are 2 designated hitters. And that's cool. If somebody can't make it, they'll pick up the character. Now, that's got to be complete trust. The character holder is going to let somebody else run the character and not get ticked off if their player character dies. Now, if the person they lend it to did something stupid, well, that's one thing. If it's just bad luck, hard times, well, that's something else. So there's got to be an implicit trust. And the DM's got to be able to implicitly trust who these pinch hitters are going to be. And yes, the DM could run it as an NPC. Or you could just, oh no, where'd Ralph go? Shit, he must be lost. And you're underground. He could be lost. He could have fallen into a pit. He could have been abducted. Any number of things you can do. And just could have been lost, and he manages to find you again at the next episode. Of course, he doesn't share in any of the experience or the loot's up to the party, but he wouldn't get any experience having done nothing that adventure, just except wandered lost in the wilderness, or in the underground. So any of those will work under the right circumstances. The character owner has got to trust the pinch hitter. The DM's got to be okay with that. And the pinch hitters got to play it to the best of their ability. Or they got lost, and they were found wandering later. They found your trail and tracked you down. And beat up and hit points from exhaustion and all this kind of shit. It's another way. Just another way. I'm looking into the Blackmoor supplement and understand it was a huge undertaking for you. Did you have any copy editors helping, like Rob Coons? Rob Coons? Rob's still alive. I have no necessary. I don't feel any necessity to antagonize him unduly. No. I had no copy editors whatsoever. I had no idea what half of it was except scribbled notes. And therefore, Well, Steve Marsh's part of the Sahagin was pretty well organized, but the rest of them were just bits and pieces of fragments of information. I had to use the Sahagin to fill out the book, and what the hell, toads, frogs, mermen, and it's all wet, slimy stuff. So I figured that was okay, and it was the first time that we showed the players, here is how you can design a temple. And all the things that go into a temple design, guards and patrols and duty shifts and duties and all these kind of things. And so, it was our hope that people would see that and go, oh, shoot, I can do that, and go off and do their own. And in some cases, it worked. Rob can't deny the fact that when it came time to put out Gods, Demigods, and Heroes, he didn't have his half done. Jim Ward and I filled in his half. Rob was not a reliable writer. Rob was a kid. He was young. I'm not going to condemn him for ill behavior when he was young. It's what it was. But no, I had no help whatsoever. And at one point I said something to Gary about floundering. He says, hey, you said you're an editor. This is why we hired you. So I said, okay. And I pulled my pennies up and I went out and finished editing. And that meant writing a lot of string togethers, stuff that hooked things together, connected ideas that, dividing stuff into chapters and segments in the book, and having to write the fillers and the bridge work, the bridge material. But it was a great experience as far as cut my teeth, and I hope, I'm pretty sure I got better as I went on. Okay, this person said that they had 5 inches of snow on the northeastern shore of Lake Ontario. Well, we only had 2. I'm starting a 5e D&D game this week for 8 players, all in their late 20s and early 30s, and 2 young teenagers. All of the players at the table are brand new to role-playing games, except one who is also a DM, but taking this chance to run a character instead of a game. I've never run a table for that many players before, so I'm just concerned about keeping them all engaged in what's happening at the table. Hopefully in the future I can convince some of them to try out my favorite edition of D&D, which is BX with me, Basic and Expert. I enjoy your channel and the wisdom and knowledge you. Knowledge. Yes, I will impart stuff. Well, you see, here's a problem. In my opinion, one of the many problems with 5e, and that is 5e is heavily reliant on skills and abilities, charts and tables, automatic numbers. Now, when I ran large games, and Ace nowhere near what I've had to either run at a con or ran in college when we were first getting off the ground, so that was 17. But they were doing things because I went around the table and went, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And they're going, well, I'm checking the floors, I'm checking the ceilings, I'm checking the walls, and you kept them involved by having them do things that you called upon. Now you've got 8 players, and those 5 eaters are going to go, oh, what does my spidey sense tell me about? Is there any magic in this room? When actually, what I hate about the spells and abilities tables is the reliance upon them to tell them something instead of asking questions to gain information. Many years ago, when I was running a campaign here in Cincinnati and testing a lot of the stuff that I was writing for Eldridge, I had 3 or 3.5 players who just sat at the table waiting for me to tell them things. Hardly ever opened their mouths, hardly ever asked a question. And occasionally I'd turn to them and say something, and they'd visibly start. So that it's tougher. Except it isn't. Especially when you get started at first. Just kind of gloss over that spells and ability crap. And have them ask questions. Make them gather information. Gathering information makes you part of the group when you all get together to pool what you've learned. The best place to do that is something happening in a giant city. We're going to go check the caravanserai. We're going to go check the Tinkers neighborhood. We're going to go, we're going to go here. We're going to go there. All trying to find out information pertinent to what they're trying to do. Without ignoring those damn charts and tables, it is hard to keep them involved. As a puppeteer, you don't want to pull the strings too much, because it's not really the job of the DM to be a puppeteer. But sometimes you might have to. Have bad things happen until they get the idea that, hey, maybe I ask some questions. Because I don't believe any of those charts and ability, those tables, the skills and ability, I don't think any of them, are they 100% infallible? Just a knack you have based on a percentage roll or whatever. Well, till they start asking questions, everything's got a plus 20, and they're helpless. I don't consider 8 to be a lot. I limit the Wheel of Blame to 7, simply because it works out to be roughly a half hour per player, the number of players. And when you're doing online stuff, 3.5 hours is better than 4. Because then you got to schedule a second meeting right after the first one. So for that reason, I do it that way. You can have stuff happening to them constantly. If you're outdoors, you can have all manner of things happening to them, individually or in pairs or whatever, and make them all doing things. If you're outdoors, well, who's gathering wood? Who's looking for edible berries? All these kinds of things. Who's scouting the perimeter of the camp or the potential camp? These will all keep them involved in thinking about what's going on in the game. Then you got to hope that the chemistry strikes, the fire starts, and it kind of goes from there. It's one of the main things I really dislike about the last edition is those charts, those skills and abilities. It just automatically tells you something. No, if you went into one of my rooms and I had a particularly well-hidden trap or a particularly well-hidden little cache where there's some loot in, I would assign a base percentage of finding it, and then add whatever the character's abilities are to it. So if it started out with a base 20, but the character was able to add 30 more, well, they had a half a chance of finding it now. You can do that kind of thing. Make them ask questions. Make them try. Nothing worse than somebody sneaking a look at their phone in their lap while the game's going on. I nearly threw a guy out of one of my games once. I threatened him. I said, if I see you look down at that damn phone again, I'm going to hit your character with a blue bolt, and that's 27 D12s plus 27. And he decided that 27 times 6.5 plus 27 would very likely kill him 3 times. So he got the point. That's one way to keep involvement in. Threaten them with dire shit if they don't. All right, there's a reply to that. 5e is cumbersome with that many. Too many actions, extra actions, free actions, reactions, feats, extra spells, and magic effects, etc. BX, while on the other hand, is always fantastic. Shadow Dark splits are different and is great for large party or noobs. Essentials kit box is pretty good for it too. So yeah, maybe you ought to see if you can't get them to talk something out. Because really, when it comes right down to it, all these games are pretty much the same. We all assume the mantle of another being, and write the play as we go along. So, what's this? Oh, sacrilege! Tim is saying whatever system you play with, if you're having fun, that's great. That's great. I just don't understand some of the other games and why some of them are so popular. Oh well. Okay, Dungeon Ecology Biome. Other than undead creatures and or some kind of magical mechanical constructs, what types of monster would you recommend for a sort of closed tomb type dungeon? Like you're exploring a pyramid of some kind and wanted to have been sealed away from the outside world for centuries. Just a complete lack of light would make things difficult. And then it drew 2 replies. The first reply was, not for the undead. And the second reply was, cool question. Ironically, stasis might be a big factor in this scenario. Mummies, mummified monsters even. Gods, that's a cool thought. Tell us what you decide upon. Yeah, stuff can be in stasis. And your mere presence breaks the stasis. A tomb-type dungeon, the very fact that it's a tomb really, really, really demands that it has undead things. Skeletons, mummies, wights, whatever. I mean, why? If you're going to play fantasy and you're going to go get, the Pharaoh's golden necklace or whatever, well, yeah, it's got to have some undead guards. And good Lord, undead puts a fear of being touched into anybody. Any gamer with half a brain gets a little puckery when they run up against something that can remove levels. Just think about that. They don't have to be real powerful. You can kill them easy, but if there's a bunch of them, then some people are going to lose some levels. A tomb-like dungeon. Now, let's see, someone else. Okay. Somebody else posted something, I can't find it right now, about dung beetles. Dung beetles would clean up the poop. Well, I did a little looking into that. And I just figured out, I took as a example of one monster as an aggregate of, say, many on a level, I took a rhinoceros. And how much poop does a rhinoceros produce? Now, if the rhinoceros has a steady food supply, And it must have if it's below, or it's been held in stasis or whatever. It puts out a lot in a day. A lot, based on how much it eats. And it would take dung beetles. Well, first of all, the initial deposits can be this big around. It would take a dung beetle this long to be able to roll that, and it would take a lot of them. So now your dungeon is overrun by dung beetles. You can't walk anywhere without stepping on them. They're on the walls, they're on the ceilings. And it stinks. Because it takes a while for those dung balls to decompose and break down and not smell like what they are, rolled up balls of shit. You can have things that consume it. You can have periodic events like rainstorms that tend to flush stuff out, because you can have, if it's an old ruin, it can have the remnants of a plumbing system. You can absolutely justify it. Some of it still works, some of it doesn't. The parts that still work would be inhabited because they provide fresh water. And the parts where it doesn't work would be uninhabited because they stink and there's no water. The dungeon ecology shouldn't be overthought, but it should certainly be considered in making and now here I'm going to violate all the rules of fantasy and say a realistic dungeon. I would say, in terms of fantasy, plausible, swallowable, something that's not going to require your friends that are playing at the table to, what the are you talking? Okay, it's that striking that balance between the DM and the players. The DM gives the players what they want, and vice versa. But never too much either way. Sorry, my mind seems to be really active. Oh, this guy. Okay, second comment. What about various languages in a campaign setting? Would you ever skip having a common language that all intelligent creatures know? How about several different human languages that only certain tribes or cultures speak? As in Norse Viking encounters, the Inuit native Greenlander, and they have no common language between them, worth the effort or just too much trouble trying to have the players communicate in sign language? Well, why is it hard to communicate in sign language? Die rolls. You as a DM determine the chances that their sign language or their communication can be effective. And if it is, it is. And if it isn't, it isn't. And sure, give different races and different nationalities their own language. Nothing drives anybody crazier than being in an elevator with 7 other people speaking 3 different languages to each other. And, what the hell's going on? And are they talking about me? So, you can have a lot of fun with languages. They can find some poor bugger wandering in the wilderness that's managed to stay alive for a really, really, really long time, that has no knowledge of any working language, or is not spoken in so long it doesn't understand anything. But but you got to be able to gesture, and gesturing is the basis of sign language. Now, certain things can mean certain things in one place, but certain gestures mean something else in another. Or you can have something as universal as the sign language that was used on the plains in Western America. Lots of people knew it. sign languages come about because traders and entrepreneurs go to new places, make known why they're there, hopefully strike up an amicable arrangement, and they understand each other and both parties benefit. And of course, you gotta have dead languages when it comes to scrolls and stuff. Oh yeah, come on. Everything can't be printed in the King's English in 14-point Georgia. Now that's a type font that studies have done on. People found they ran test groups reading stuff, and they found it more believable more often if it was printed in Georgia than Times New Roman or any of the other standards. Interesting. I just thought it was anyway. Free fact for the day. The Norse encountered the Inuit. Norse made a huge mistake when they gave the Inuits cheese, but they meant well, I'm sure. They didn't know that the Inuits couldn't process cheese, and they all had lactose intolerance, and it's going to kill half the village. If they had better sign language, maybe they'd known that. But how do you? Sign language is just for the most basic. Hi, are you a friend or a foe? That's what it boils down to. Yeah, I'm cool. No weapons in my hands. Just like the knights shook with their sword hands empty and greeted with empty hands, no weapons. It's all sign language of a sort. In response to that, I like the idea of a fumble table for that interaction. Your gestures enrage the Vikings or the Greenlanders. Your gestures induce madness in everyone. Your gestures manage to get across half your message, which is counteracted by the misunderstanding the second half receives. You watch the rest of the conversation hanging upside down from entrails. 4, everybody agrees on removing your hands to stop you from gesturing ever again. That last one seems a little extreme. Just a little extreme. But yeah, it's all potential. It's all fodder for the game. All fodder. Yo, Tim. On challenging rules lawyers at the table, or how the history of physics might apply to attitudes towards rules as written. Not so much a question as a proposal. Instead of showing rules lawyers the door, could we try to deform their minds by overwhelming their sense of entitlement with the following possibly spurious comparison of attitudes to TTRPG rules with the attitudes towards physics? Oh, this is going to be a long read. Newtonian physics. Rules as written and a pro-rules lawyer attitude. Newton didn't identify the constituent nature and was criticized for instinct. Okay. In gaming, this equates to the rules are always this way because that's the way they are. Then there's the theater of relativity. House rules, light rules, rule of cool, and discourages rules as written and rules lawyers. In gaming, this equates to the rules are this way, but that doesn't mean they always apply to every situation. Let's introduce new consistencies as needed. Okay. Then we come into quantum physics. Rules light, rule of cool, DM-less, storytelling focused. Quantum physics has several strange precepts, but I think the most fundamental points are the observer affects the observed, showing that an observer or particular experiments influences the physical outcome of the experiment merely by observing it, and telling where everyone is working to entertain each other and themselves, following agreed upon but entirely contingent understandings that may or may not change. In gaming, this equates to the rules are what we together make them to be, here and now as we play. I think I might like that one so far the best. Once one has delineated these divisions, one can then propose that the player consider a paradigm shift in their perceptions of the rules of the game. Alternately, one could simply employ the worst application of Einstein's theories and nuke the players out of one's group. Yeah, it's kind of harsh, at least at first. If they just won't see it, yeah, nuke them. But, you got to give them several chances. While I believe that's a silly proposal, I had fun writing it and hope you derive some fun from it too. Yeah, I like it's not going to win a Pulitzer for prose, but you had some good ideas there and nice synopses. And the writer says he'd also like to apologize to all physics students and graduates for my no doubt ignorant reductionist explanations of these three epochs of physics theory. I'm sorry if this proposal stretches the format of your show too far. I realize that I stepped dangerously into the Curmudgeon Cellar. Vorpal blade in hand. The hell you have a Vorpal blade, not unless I say you do. In hand, bearing only my patron's name, Curiosity. You might be looking for a Vorpal blade, but if you came into my cellar with a Vorpal blade, you'd be immediately obliterated. I just got wards everywhere. I'm starting up a company that manufactures and sells magic mirrors. Will you be my partner? Yeah. What do they do? How do they do it? And what kind of margin is involved? We there was another group that ran in the greater Cincinnati area that was also a bunch of which were Partha players. And little known fact, Ral Partha Miniatures got they took their name from a character's name out of the campaign they were playing at the time, because all the magic items and stuff had stamped on the bottom this individual, and his name was Ral Partha, and he produced all the magic, and he was some mythical high-level dude. And when Glenn and Jack and all them and Chuck and Mark all got together and formed the company, that's the name they chose. And the guy whose nickname was Ral was their head caster for many, many, many years. I think that's it. Long one tonight. Yeah, it's a very long one. No video next week. So, that being the case, tonight I will wish you a very happy Thanksgiving. Hope you get together with you're able to get together with who you want to get together with, and enjoy the camaraderie and fellowship of shared meals. And with that, Dodada Gobi. Hello, and welcome to my cellar.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Last man around when them rates went down. Called in Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. CSR and fantasy, collection of micro armory, Titan with tramp under a tree, high as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon.